Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. Despite easing inflation, Filipino consumers remain highly value-conscious, shaping how brands must position their products in a competitive FMCG landscape. Companies must strike a balance between premiumization and affordability while adapting to evolving shopper behavior across various retail channels. Joining us to break down the latest insights from Kantar's FMCG Monitor Q4 2024 is Laurice Obana, Head of Thought Leadership at Kantar Worldpanel. Laurice, welcome to Follow the Money.
Thank you, Raine, and good afternoon to you and everyone who's tuned into your show.
And thank you so much for joining us. Now, let's start off. Inflation seems to still be a concern among consumers of fast-moving consumer goods companies. How should FMCG companies then optimize their product mix, whether premium, mid-tier, or value for money, to maintain profitability while also addressing affordability?
All right, maybe to just start off things, Raine, let me just also harp on the fact that you mentioned that inflation has been easing, and this is some good news. But you are right in that managing the budget within the growing needs and wants of the Filipino family remains very significant, as most of us actually belong to the lower middle class. Now, circling back to your question, I think it is imperative for brands, whether in premium, mid-tier, or VFM proposition, to really understand and go back to the heart of everything, and that is to understand the consumer and the shopper and what it is that they truly value. So it is only when we understand what is truly of utmost importance to them that we can go back and take a look at our value chain to lessen those that do not really bring value to the consumers and work towards building on what is truly more valuable to them. So in keeping this balance, then we're able to mitigate costs, lessen the pressure on profitability, and still be serving the needs of the shoppers.
So the key word, of course, is value. It doesn't matter whether it's the high-end or the low-end or the mid-end products. But your data shows that as Filipinos prioritize value, defining it is not just about price. Are there marketing strategies that would work best to target budget-conscious yet quality-seeking shoppers?
I think if in terms of marketing strategies, there would be a lot of them. Depends on what actually your brand will be, what is the thrust, and what is the objective. However, I would point back to a simple framework that Kantar has done, and it's coming from analyzing millions of data points. And we have come up with 3 important thrusts in order to remain relevant and to grow. So it cuts across price segments and holds true whether they are value or premium brands. So these 3 buckets on how brands can grow would, number 1, be, of course, to win strongly in terms of mental and physical availability. So the first one would really be to predispose more people to buy our brands, meaning we make more people more inclined to buy our brands and building brand love, so that anytime they are actually exposed to competitors, or even there comes a time when faced with even lower priced competitors, it will be hard to actually shift them into moving. Second would be to really be more present, no matter how they like our brand. If we're really not available, then how could they buy us? So second bucket would be to really increase accessibility and visibility. And lastly would be to find new spaces or continue to innovate in serving the growing and changing needs and wants of the consumers and the shoppers.
So I'm looking at one of your slides here, and it's saying that brand promotions and raffles do make an impact on the shoppers. Is that correct?
That is correct. Every year it changes, but one thing on top remains constant, and that even if we keep on promoting, if they do not like the brand that is being promoted, then it will be out of the consideration set. So I think that is primary. Secondary only would be how impactful the promotion will be, and thirdly, if it's something that catches their fancy. Example, just for this year, you are correct in saying that raffle promotion seems to be making a comeback, going on an uptick in terms of the preferred promotions that shoppers have.
Understood. Well, this year is an election year, and it's expected to boost FMCG spending, but this increase varies by category. Can you share with us what this means?
Well, it just means that certain categories have a natural uplift whenever there's an election period, well, because of the context and the surrounding activities that Filipinos would have. But in general, because there is a spike in GDP and economic activity, we really see that shopper baskets go up whenever it's election season, and it cuts across major segments. However, what we do see is that when people are more out of home, they are busier, they stay outside of the house, there are more rallies, then out-of-home consumption may also be something that we can look at. It means that we have to be prepared to also be able to deliver in the format that is expected when people, of course, want to consume out of home.
So I guess that answers the question of how brands might be able to time their promotions and advertising to maximize sales and revenues. But, can you share with us what kind of categories might see that pickup, especially because it's an election year?
Food, beverages, these are the ones where we're likely seeing to really pick up during this time. And might I just add, in terms of maybe communicating and advertising, I would just maybe highlight the fact that during these, because of media, and that there are many noises probably that would be, or messages that would, that will inundate both traditional and also digital media. And it would be harder for our brands to sustain visibility during this time. So I think what brands can also do is to not forget that there is an opportunity to communicate and meet the shoppers at the point of sale. And in fact, it has its advantages because you communicate closer to the point where they buy. So be more seen in the shelves, in retail spaces, retail areas, and that we know that shoppers have been shopping more frequently, and it's a good opportunity to engage with our brands and also our shoppers.
The competition is so much tougher, but also be where they are. And when it comes to that, Filipino shoppers are increasingly buying from sari-sari stores, mini marts, and online platforms. What does this mean for the consumer and the brands? How should brands adjust their distribution and retail strategies to capture growth in these shifting channels? Would you be able to share with us what kind of parts or shares these point of sale areas might be?
Well, the biggest channel in terms of share would still be the sari-sari stores. Well, it's because maybe 99% of Filipinos go to sari-sari stores. The second would be supermarkets, or what we call like the bigger format stores. So somewhere in between, sharing between 5 to 1% in different, but with high growth rates, with strong 2-digit, 3-digit growths, would be the more modern or emerging channels such as your online, even discounters, the likes of Save, Dali. It's just been in Europe for the longest time, and now it has entered into the Philippines. So, and we see that they are closer to the neighborhood. So these are the stores that are actually growing faster in the Philippines. So back to your question as how we can maximize this, it's to really recognize that with all these channels, and Filipinos are not just multi-retailer, they are also multi-channel shoppers. And we just have to recognize as brands that there are unique shopping missions whenever we go to these channels, and that we should have the right format of products fit for purpose. So the challenge is that these spaces that are growing are also relatively smaller compared to supermarkets, and they cannot carry the same amount of products compared to the bigger stores. So it's really the precision and understanding and nuancing our approach when it comes to the right product assortment that we will offer in these stores.
Laurice, you were saying that because there's more shoppers going to these sari-sari stores or closer to the neighborhoods and even online, would you say that, or did your study ever reveal whether there's less sales then? Are people or shoppers going less to the big malls, to the big supermarkets, and instead going to these channels? Again, like how much share of the total sales of grocery shopping goes to these smaller channels now as it shifts in the previous years?
I cannot, top of mind, so 40 would be the share of spend for sari-sari stores. It's around 26% maybe for supermarkets, and all the rest are shared by all these other emerging channels. So thereabouts, maybe around the 30% is shared by these different channels. So, yeah, and what was your question again, Raine?
And online, your study has been going on for a few years now, but online, what has been the trend? Has online shopping actually grown by leaps and bounds as we imagine it has?
In FMCG, it's been growing. It's fast, and there are double-digit growths for online, strong growth. However, in terms of channel share, it occupies just around 1%. I think that in the Philippines, it's still largely the brick and mortars, the physical stores, even direct selling, that is also pretty much the majority of where spend is actually made.
Mm-hmm. Would your study be able to identify what factors affect online shopping? Is it because of how banked our consumers are, whether they do have access to a bank account or even a GCash account, or other online channels, or is it because they have a preference for paying still in cash or the like?
Well, we did, it was part of the survey that we did last year, I think in ShopperScope. We did see the Filipinos still pay majority in cash, although we have a lot of other options. I think that for online, they buy more, how do you call it, clothes, maybe non-food stuff in online. So it's pretty much brick and mortar because they want to also choose. And also the preference is in sari-sari stores because of the amount of cash outlay that they're able to actually afford. So when you do online, for the shipping services to be worth it, you have to buy at least in bigger quantity for it to be worthwhile. But in sari-sari stores, it's very easy, quick. It's just an extension of your pantry, even seeing your neighbors. So this is where the majority of the Filipinos go. And so it's hard to top that, because even in sari-sari stores, it's quite easy to have the product that you need at the manageable cost. It's even, I think, in smaller, how do you call that?
Quantities?
I think in quantities, yes, and it's easier on the pocket for most of the Filipinos.
Talk about pockets. I hope you don't mind. What might be the average transaction value of these products, or the shopping bill of these shoppers who go to the sari-sari store and the smaller neighborhood outlets?
It depends on the category, actually, but I think what we can see is that how frequently they go, and every time they go, it could range from 20 to 60 pesos. But quite interestingly is because they're in the sari-sari store almost every day. So it's more than even every other day. It's almost every day that they go to sari-sari store. So add up maybe the smaller amounts, but the number of times that they go, and then of course that is why there is a bigger chunk of spend that goes to sari-sari stores.
Right. And would you be able to identify maybe what are the top products or FMCG products or goods or brands that they go for?
Yeah, I definitely can, but I will reserve it because we are soon coming up with the top most chosen brands, and it's just maybe going to be released in 4 weeks' time. So I would want to announce it in that forum.
All right. We're actually looking forward to that. I'm sure we're going to have you again in a month. But we do have to pause for a few reminders. We still have to mine your data a little bit more. But when we return, we'll ask Kantar, what should Filipino consumers do to spend smarter, shop healthier, and save more in 2025? Stay on BNC and follow the money.
They say one man's trash is another man's treasure. Who would have thought na ang mga pinaglumaang upuan sa isang fast food chain magiging instrumento rin para mabigyan ng magandang bukas ang ilang mga kabataan?
Pagpasok ko dito, sira-sira ang upuan at mga mesa. Minsan naman dito po kami sa saig nagsusulat.
Hindi po maayos makapagsulat, di po makapag-focus.
Ang mga store furniture na di na magagamit sa isang fast food restaurant, ginhawa ang hatid para sa mga mag-aaral na nangangailangan ng mga armchair. Hindi lang yan, dagdag income din para sa mga nagpo-produce ng mga upuang ito. Witness how this initiative of environmental responsibility became a continuous commitment to students and the community. Catch Pay It Forward as we hear more stories of companies and organizations doing their corporate civic duty. Airing on March 24 at 8:30 p.m. only here on Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Welcome back to Follow the Money. We're still with Kantar Worldpanel's Laurice Obana. Laurice, we're still on the juggling acts that both consumers and brands have to face in the retail sphere. Did your study point to what might be the best ways for Filipino shoppers to save more on groceries without sacrificing quality? You mentioned earlier that they actually go to the sari-sari stores and the convenience stores practically every day. But of course, there's a premium put on those neighborhood stores because of the convenience.
That's correct. So part of our study is also observing as to every time there is actually an uptick in inflation, how do shoppers react whenever this happens in order to juggle and stretch the monies that they have. So part of the reaction that they would actually do in order for them to ensure that they get to buy what they need is, firstly, you are correct. They shift channels in a way that they're able to manage their money better. So either they go to sari-sari stores, perhaps go to discounters. So this is one way that they're able to cope. Secondly, is that if they want to continue consuming the brands that they prefer, and yet these brands may be a bit pricey, what they would do is actually just to buy in smaller quantities. So third might be to look for an alternative option of the same usage, maybe within the category, and that this option may include either private labels or brands that are actually cheaper.
Mm-mm. But what's not cheap is actually healthier products. Your data shows the demand for healthier products is growing, but cost remains a barrier. Why is that? Why is it that healthier food is always more expensive? What are practical ways that consumers might be able to shop for healthier food without breaking the bank?
I think this is just a personal opinion. This is not included in the study. But if it were me, I would just go back to checking the label because of it's not really synonymous. Healthy is not really synonymous with something that's expensive. Maybe it just goes back to looking at maybe the sugar content. Do they contain ingredients that you can actually understand? So for me and personally, it's just being more mindful of what it is that we take in. And that knowing that these products are actually becoming the healthier alternative to what we have. So not necessarily more expensive.
And we're looking at your chart over there and showing us that, of course, healthier food means to the consumers that the ingredients, it must be natural, and they do have plant-based options or alternatives, and you do offer a calorie deficit with that. Portion control, though, that's up to us. That's up to our initiative. Now, given inflation, rising costs, are there ways Filipino households can adjust their shopping habits to maximize income while maintaining essential purchases?
I'm sorry, I just have to circle back to the healthy products and just to clarify these what you call this, the question that we asked there was maybe what actions do they deem healthy? So it is just in the perception of the Filipinos, not necessarily saying that these are the things that make a product healthy. But on to your question on what actions can Filipinos do in order to balance their budgets, their income, I think I would circle back to choosing the activities that you actually do. So if it's going to be outside of just FMCG purchase, then we have to evaluate what goes on to the different, how much share of wallet does this take up. So in the survey that we did ask them, how do you cope when you have to manage budgets? And some Filipinos would actually say they spend less on entertainment, they would buy they would eat out less. But in a matter when they with regard to FMCG, then I go back to those different actions that they do whenever they try to save on money. So number one is probably to really go to stores where it's actually cheaper. And one thing that we can do is actually be on the lookout, because different retailers would have different offers, different anniversary sales. Just the other day, there was a club store that had 50% off on all fresh products. So I think these are the ways that we can really stretch the budget. So secondly is to also look for close or alternative options to the brands that we like, and not all the time do expensive products mean to be quality. So I think there is also an emergence of private labels in the country. It's not just sold in the discounters, but within our major retailers, we see that they are already offering their own house brands. And thirdly is, of course, to do portion control. And maybe if we were consuming maybe 1 kilo before, and then of course, if we still want to have a taste of those favorite brands and we need to manage money, then of course you just have to temper off a little bit on what it is that we consume.
And based on
hopefully not.
And based on the slides that you actually shared with us, the other option between choosing healthier food is to actually buy medical insurance, and it seems that healthcare costs have risen as well, and medical insurance has also risen by 18.3% in price. So it's really, again, a juggling act. Now, when we were talking about spending, there are some people who would save a lot more, but it seems that the Gen Z and Generation Alpha are the big spenders, but they're also a bigger population in terms of spending. They're making up 62% of the population. They're emerging as key spenders. What are the ways brands can tailor their communication or media and product strategy so that they could resonate with these next gen shoppers?
Well, the Gen Zs and the Alphas are, again, just another cohort of shoppers, and they're very unique in a sense that they are socially aware, self-rewarding, tech-savvy, and even, they have been shaped by global disruptions and innovations. So one thing about them is to recognize what is it that truly matters to them. So I think in the general trends that we've seen on what is really consuming, what are Filipinos most concerned about, number one would be inflation, and then the first two actually talk about inflation, costs of goods, rising fuel, and the third one would talk about climate change. But when you take a look at what's important to the Gen Zs and Alphas, you see that aside from climate change, which is shared with most of the Filipinos, they are also very aware of geopolitical conflicts, even understanding mental health. And so these are the things that set them apart and make them different, and even in the way they shop. So example, most Filipinos would go to sari-sari stores and even supermarkets, or the older age groups. But the Gen Zs would tend to go more online, even in neighborhood stores, convenience stores. So they're very different. And in order to appeal to them, you must start understanding really what is important, what their shopping habits are. And so we're able to relate, to talk to them, and also be found by them.
Mm-hmm. And they are emerging as the most interesting market group and shoppers as well, not just for FMCGs, but also for the candidates in this year's elections. Laurice Obana, Director of Shopper Insights and Thought Leadership at Kantar Worldpanel. Lots of things to talk about still, and we're really looking forward to the results of your study next month. Hope you share them with us and how brands and companies can leverage these learnings to be able to reach their markets better, sell better, and earn so much more. Hope to have you again soon. And thank you for joining us and
Thank you, Raine.
All Filipino consumers remain price sensitive, but prioritize value beyond cost, pushing brands to rethink their product mix, pricing, and promotions to stay competitive in 2025. And that is it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.